Hey everyone, and welcome. I want you to imagine a financial system where you couldn't charge interest, not because of some new regulation, but because of a principle that's over 1,400 years old. A principle that says you can't actually sell time itself. It's a pretty radical idea, right? Well, today we're diving deep into exactly that, using a fantastic article by Shahid and Ambreen Sultan from the International Journal of Finance and Economics as our guide. We're going to unpack the foundational rules of exchange in Islamic commercial law. So, let's get right into it.
So let's start with that question. Just to frame our whole conversation, what if selling time itself was just off the table? I don't mean your labor or your services, but the literal passage of time in a financial deal. Keep that idea in your head, because it is the key to understanding everything else we're about to talk about.
Okay, so at the absolute heart of this entire framework is one simple but incredibly powerful idea: equality. Seriously, every single rule we're about to explore stems from this core belief that any fair exchange has to be a balanced one. And here it is, stated as plainly as it gets. Any transaction that's considered valid or permitted has to be fundamentally equivalent. It means one person can't get an extra benefit or advantage without giving something of real, equal value in return. This idea of a balanced countervalue, it sets the stage for everything that follows. So, you might be asking, how do you even define equality in practice? Well, the answer comes from a very specific authoritative text that zeroes in on 6 key commodities, and these 6 items together create the master rulebook for what fair exchange looks like. Let's dig into how this foundation is built.
So this is it. This is the foundational tradition, the hadith, and you have to appreciate how incredibly precise the language is. It lists out specific items and then gives 3 crystal clear conditions for trading them. Like for like, in equal weights, and from hand to hand. This isn't just a friendly suggestion, it's a binding rule that forms the absolute bedrock of the whole legal framework.
Now, why these 6 things specifically? Gold, silver, wheat, barley, dates, and salt. Well, what's so brilliant about this is how these commodities become the blueprint for all other transactions. You've got 2 precious metals, which were basically money, and 4 staple food items. They're all fungible, meaning one unit is the same as another, and they were widely available, which makes them the perfect test cases for building a universal rule.
All right, so we have the master rulebook based on these 6 items. Now let's see how it actually plays out in the real world. We can break it down into 3 distinct, really practical exchange scenarios.
First up, we've got the most restrictive case, trading a commodity for the exact same thing. So, think gold for gold, or wheat for wheat. In this situation, the rules are absolute. No exceptions. The amount must be identical. That's what we call corporeal equality. And the trade has to happen right then and there, immediately. That's temporal equality. You can't even trade, say, 10 pounds of amazing high-quality dates for 12 pounds of lower-quality dates. Nope. The weight has to be exactly the same.
Now for the second scenario. What happens if the items are in the same category, or genus, like they're both precious metals, but they aren't the exact same thing, or species, like trading gold for silver? Well, in this case, the strict like-for-like rule on weight gets relaxed. You and the other person can agree on whatever exchange rate you want. But, and this is a big but, the hand-to-hand rule still applies. The deal has to be settled on the spot, no delays.
And this brings us to our third and most flexible scenario. This is when you're trading things from totally different categories, say gold for a goat. Here, both of those strict rules are relaxed. The price? That's set by whatever you both agree on. And crucially, the payment can be deferred. It can be paid at a future date. And this right here, this is what opens the door for permissible credit sales.
So, we've seen the rules for what makes a fair exchange. Now let's flip the coin and look at the other side. What exactly are all these rules trying to prevent? This leads us straight to the super important concept of RIBA, which basically means a prohibited or unjust excess.
The first type is called riba al-fadl. Think of this as an unfair surplus in the actual stuff being traded. The classic example is the one we mentioned earlier, trading a smaller amount of a high-quality good for a larger amount of the same good, just of lower quality. That's not allowed because the physical amount, the corpus, isn't equal. In this system, quality is seen as subjective, and it can't be used to justify an objective difference in weight or measure.
The second type is riba al-nasa, and this one is any forbidden gain you make just because there is a delay in the transaction. Remember those first 2 scenarios where the trade had to be hand-to-hand? Well, delaying one side of that deal to get some kind of advantage is strictly forbidden. And here's the kicker. This is what effectively prohibits treating time itself as a commodity you can sell for a profit.
Okay, let's zoom out for a minute. I know this might all seem like ancient rules about trading dates and salt, but believe me, they have absolutely massive implications for how we think about modern finance and economics.
And this brings us right back to the core economic principle we teased at the very beginning. In this framework, time is simply not marketable wealth. It cannot be bought, it cannot be sold, and it cannot be rented. This one simple idea fundamentally changes how you have to approach things like loans, debt, and credit.
So let's quickly recap the biggest takeaways here. First, better quality can't justify a bigger quantity when you're trading the same item. Second, any delay in those hand-to-hand exchanges is, by definition, an imbalance. Third, you can value contracts in stable things like gold, not just currencies that fluctuate. And finally, and this one is a real game changer for modern finance, you are not allowed to sell a debt for another debt. That single rule has profound implications for how credit markets can be structured. So we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. If you were to build an economy from the ground up on this one principle, that time cannot be sold, what does that actually change? How would you have to completely rethink debt, credit, and even the very idea of investment? It's a powerful question to consider. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.